Welcome back to the BJJ Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Ford. My guest today is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's a Copa Podio Grand Prix silver medalist and also a black belt European Open bronze medalist. He's a two-time brown belt European champion, a two-time purple belt European champion, and a blue belt European champion. He was also a purple belt world no-gi silver medalist and a Polaris super fight winner. He's also a veteran of Quintet. He's the creator of the Tarik Hopstock, which is a very unique and innovative variation of the omoplata. And he represents Frontline Academy in Norway, where he teaches full-time. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to be joined today by Tarik Hopstock. How are you today, Tarik?
Hey, guys. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm doing great.
Excellent, man. Tarik, you're someone I always really enjoy watching compete, man, so it's really great to have you here on the show today. I appreciate you taking the time. Man, if you don't mind, the question I always like to start with, tell us about where you're from originally and what your life was like before you found jiu-jitsu.
Man, so I'm from Norway. I'm half Moroccan, like ethnical, but I've lived a couple of different places throughout my life. So mostly here in Norway, though. And I started with jiu-jitsu when I was 15, so I did some judo before that. So my life wasn't too interesting at that point, other than, high school and classically. I was looking for somewhere to belong, and, falling into jiu-jitsu, I think that was a great environment for me to really feel safe and grow up in.
Now, is it your mom or your dad that's Moroccan?
It's my dad who's Moroccan, and my mom is Norwegian.
Nice. Have you had a chance to spend time in Morocco? Is that a place you've been able to travel to?
Yeah, previously I used to travel there every summer, and then I lived there for about 3 years or so, from when I was 10 to I was 13. How
would you describe the difference culturally between Morocco and Norway?
Oh, big differences. So, I mean, from everything like food, warmth, weather, everything like that. And then there's a lot of different values. Taking care of nature is one big value here in Norway, and not so much there in Morocco to that degree. But yeah, it's different for sure.
That's really cool. Yeah, there's a Moroccan restaurant that I used to go to. The Moroccan food is amazing, man. I love that style of food. Yeah. I could see where if you were staying there every summer, you'd come back a little heavier than you left, I imagine, right?
For sure.
That's cool. Now you found judo first before jiu-jitsu, right? How did that happen?
That's true. That's correct. So it was actually a friend of mine, one of my classmates. And he was taking me or brought me over to this judo club, which was a quite small judo club. So it was one training once a week. And, it was actually really nice vibe in that club. And to be honest, maybe that was exactly what I needed when I was 13. Starting up, and eventually I felt I really want to pick up the pace. They started to do some second trainings on Tuesdays as well, but eventually, I figured there's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu club nearby my house, so things started moving over there a little bit more. So yeah.
That's awesome, man. And what about judo do you think you gravitated towards most? Was there any particular facets of judo that you think really came naturally to you?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of respect, and then there's all the discipline. I guess when you go into jiu-jitsu, you feel like it's more like a bro vibe compared to judo. But in a way, maybe it kept me sort of humble to begin that way as well, and always respect whoever is coming on the mat and so on. And those are values I still hold on to till this day, even though I train more, or I only train jiu-jitsu now. Technically, I feel, I don't do a lot of judo throws. You'll see me mostly playing guard. But I still teach a lot of judo because I feel like those basics are important, and everyone should know at least one throw,
Yeah, it's definitely makes you more valuable, especially in competition. If you're able to play guard or throw someone over their head, that's going to be a valuable thing for sure. Is there any particular technique or throw in judo that you still rely on today?
I love Ippon Seonage. And then there's a variation of it, Morote Seonage, which is probably the one I love the most. So and considering also jiu-jitsu, you don't want to give up your back too much. I really like Morote because what you do is basically keep the same collar that you have from the beginning, and you can always like kind of bail on the throw and still manage to pull yourself in something good.
That's awesome, man. Something that's interesting about judo that a lot of people I don't feel like mention enough is we obviously think of judo, we think of the throws and the takedowns, but judo has a tremendous amount of time spent on pinning people and keeping them controlled, and it's part of the scoring system. How much of that is translated over to jiu-jitsu for you? Obviously, being on the ground and having control is valuable.
Well, I think because the thing about judo is also being on the bottom, you don't have the same perspective of what you want to be doing. So a lot of judo players will turn their back towards their opponent, and then you'll kind of like tighten up, and then you're just trying to wait out the time. Whereas in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, let's say if you just sit on top of the person when they're like turned over on their belly, you would still get like a mount pointing situation. So there's some things that transition well, but that there's other things that would just collide with all our rule sets. But definitely like, kesagatame, like side control, there's some things that are very, very valuable to take with you over from judo to jiu-jitsu for sure.
Absolutely. And now you mentioned that eventually you found jiu-jitsu. How did that happen? And what do you remember most about your first introduction to the art?
So it was one of my friends, classmates again, actually, who did jiu-jitsu, and he was a yellow belt at the time, I think, something like that. And then he was like, man, you got to come and try this. And so I think we even went there when there wasn't any classes. So me, a friend, it was basically us three, a group of friends who went down there, and it was just us three on the mats trying to rip each other's heads off. And and I don't know why they let us do it, but they did. And then after that, we were like, okay, I have to come back to a class, So I came back to a class, and this guy, Eduardo Rios, Teta Rios, he was there, and he's such a cool guy, Brazilian, obviously. He was just taking us under his wing, and I guess we kind of fell in love in the art and the social vibe of it all, and everything was really, really cool from that point.
That's really great, man. Yeah, I always have to laugh whenever I hear stories of like white belts being allowed to just go at it, because I know some schools are real concerned about safety and things like that, but I feel like every now and then there are schools where it's just like, hey man, let's let these two wild guys just go, just for entertainment. I think sometimes the instructors just like to have a little bit of an entertainment, a little bit of a show. So that's... I
know for sure. I mean, even in my classes, I try to limit how much free sparring they have. And if I do a lot of free sparring, it's usually starting with some positional sparring just to like make them tired first and warmed up and everything to lessen the chances of any injuries, just to say it like that.
That's a really good strategy. It sounds like it's the kind of strategy that you'd have in a competition. You think about, okay, I'm going to wear the guy down first, let him get tired, put him in bad positions. I think that's a great way to apply that to teaching is, if these guys are all exhausted, they're not going to be doing backflips over each other and stuff. So that's smart. Now you mentioned Eduardo Rios. You eventually found yourself under him. How do you feel that he shaped your game? Did you feel like your game emulates his in a lot of ways?
Oh yeah, for sure. So I would say my whole fundamental game, like guard game, and I would say like the building blocks that my whole game is set up of is pretty much Teta's game, really. How should I say it? Oh, by the way, my earplugs are falling out because I have
the cauliflower.
My earplugs are cauliflower ears. So sorry.
This is a very, very common issue that we run into all the time on the show. So it's all good. If you're gonna have cauliflower on a show, this is the one to be on.
Yeah. So no, sorry. So my game really like I guess started groundwork from him. Obviously, like when I entered purple brown, I started taking a little bit more my own path. I do a little bit more lapels. I do a little bit more my style with leg locks and tercoplatas later on as well. But if you think about like the essence of my game, it's quite similar.
That's excellent, man. Now, you mentioned your friend that recommended you come to the jiu-jitsu class in the first place was a juvenile rank. So you were obviously pretty young. Was it a pretty big group of young guys in the class? Did you have a lot of guys your age to train with?
Yeah, I would say the juvenile classes was pretty big. So I was 15 at the time when I came in there, and like even though we were one of the older ones in the juvenile classes, we trained well there, and then eventually we're like, Teta would ask, do you guys want to join the adult classes right after? And we were like, super motivated. And then we would just join the adult class and get basically beat up by adults. and I remember like the process was just like, can I survive today? Yeah. Can I not get tapped? And then I guess maybe the next month it was basically don't get passed. And then, the month after that was more like, can I sweep somebody? So it was gradually just like making my way up.
That's right. Now, let me pick your brain on that, because that's something that's come up several times on the show. In your opinion, do you feel that it's better to be a higher level guy in a group of of people that you're better than, that you can consistently repeat moves and techniques live, or do you think it's better to be kind of the sheep in the wolf pack?
I think both is very important, to be honest. So you want to be able to enter a room and have to play your A game with all these guys, and then you want to be able to go in and try your weaknesses, basically, because obviously I also try to play my weaknesses against the higher level opponents, but then it's harder to get into those positions, it's harder to get it going, so you get punished quite a lot, and then you might not be able to repeat it as much as you wanted to. But with lower level opponents, you really can get away with small things, right? But then you build experience, and that gives you the ability to do it with the more higher level guys afterwards.
Yeah, that's very well said, man. Yeah, I remember that first came up on the show, I think, with one of Hoist Gracie's black belts, Rob Kahn. I was talking to him, and I always had it in my head that, man, if you want to be the best you can be in jiu-jitsu, you got to find the toughest room where like everybody's a killer, and you want to be the weakest link in a very strong room to build up to that level. But then he pointed out, he's like, man, if you're always getting beat up though, how are you actually applying anything? How are you actually getting repetition and building muscle memory on any technique you try? And I never really thought of that before. So it's interesting hearing that perspective from people at the highest levels. So
But even as, let's say, you're the highest level guy in the gym, right? And then you want your students to evolve. You want them to develop certain skills. So I will actually force some of my students into certain areas that I want them to develop. And then I will basically wait and see if they react properly. And then if I see them not reacting properly, I might pick their brain right there and then, or I'll take it up with them after the roll, basically. But like if I can force them into those positions where I want them to work, it's more of a teacher thing to do, but like that's one way to put it, right? And then if I can develop them to get better, then also they can be better training partners for me as well.
That's excellent. That's another thing too that's great, is once you start teaching, you start developing your own training partners, which I think is a really interesting aspect of being a teacher. Is I think a lot of people assume, like, man, if I stop competing and I open my own school, like, how frequently am I really going to be able to get those hard training sessions in anymore?
Yeah, no, obviously you have to find balance, right? If you let's say if you're going to teach 5 classes a day and 2 of them are kids, man, you're going to be exhausted. So trying to like do your own like strength and conditioning and your own like rounds is going to be horrible. And on top of that, let's say you go a few sparring rounds and you really push it, and then you're going to teach after that. You're not going to have the same like energy and charisma to teach those people coming up next. So it's a balance for sure.
Definitely, yeah. There's something else you said there that's interesting. You mentioned that when you see a student struggling with a particular aspect of their game, you'll force them into that position. I imagine as a teacher, this is something I'm always impressed by when I hear people, especially that teach large classes, that they're able to keep track of different students and what they're struggling with. Is that something that you find difficult to do? Because keeping track of multiple different people's progress can be challenging, I imagine.
Well, I would say the people that I keep track of is a handful of picks. Really, I don't have full view of every student, obviously, but what I do is when some of them do go and compete, and I see the fight footage afterwards. I'll take notes. So I write it down basically on my phone. I'll just write the things that I see that I can improve on, and I'll bring it up in classes. Sometimes if it's very specific, I'll just bring it up with them specifically and say, hey, I think you can work on this and this. But then if it's something that I see in general, we all as a group can work on, I'll put it in as one of the subjects we'll go through in the classes.
That's excellent. Yeah, I really like that. Let me ask you, you mentioned that when you were a juvenile moving into the adults classes, it sounds like you were one of the youngest guys in that adult class, obviously. How did that time period shape your jiu-jitsu moving forward? Being the young guy that's getting beaten up a lot, what did that do for you later?
Well, I think because at that point I wasn't fully, developed my body, like strength-wise, I didn't have anything to compete with all the adults. So it forced me to become more technical in that degree. It forced me to open my eyes to, okay, I can't win any fair, if it's a fight of physicality and power and explosiveness, most of these guys will beat me. So I had to kind of work around all those areas. And then eventually when I became, 18, 19, 20, my body was better shape. I basically had gone through puberty. So it was a different stage in my life. But then I'd already developed the technical perspective of jiu-jitsu, understanding that the details matters.
Very well said, man. It's also a good lesson for people out there listening. If you're in the adult class and there's a young, skinny teenager coming in, be nice to him, man. Because only if he sticks around, he's gonna hit that spurt, and you're gonna feel regretful if you were mean to him. There's something you said earlier, Ad, that I really liked. You mentioned that during that time period, you broke things down into goals, into mini goals. Okay, today I'm just gonna see how little I can get tapped. After that, I'm gonna see if I can just not get my guard passed. After that, I want to see if I can sweep somebody, and it kind of became an incremental goals that you set for yourself. And I really like that because jiu-jitsu is obviously challenging. And for students making their way up the ranks, a risk that I think everyone faces is burnout. What do you feel are some good ways to break training down into engaging challenges like that to keep them fun? Is there anything else like that you've done along the way?
Well, obviously, small goals is very important, and I've always been a big fan of competing. So even after training for, I think it was 2 months, I actually went to do my first competition. It didn't end well. I got armbarred after 5 seconds into the match. I pulled guard. The guy just jumped in for an armbar past my guard. He became one of my best friends today. So I actually train with him sometimes when I travel over to Sweden. So and then, once you kind of hit that, then I was motivated to come back for more. I think it was 3 months later, I went for another competition where I actually did a lot better. I don't remember all the results, but competing does give you those kind of goals set for yourself. And I didn't think much about weight class or anything like that. Don't stress about that. Just try to become better. And when you have those events coming up, you kind of feel okay, I have to work on this. I have to make sure this is tight in all those areas. And I guess that's one way of putting goals. But if you're not a big fan of competing, which I mean is totally fine as well, then I would just try to work on certain positions each day. For me, I might be watching some instructionals or something like that, and I feel like there's something that I need to work on, and then I'll force myself into these positions, and then try to like see if I can improve that area day to day.
That's excellent. I really like that, man. Hey, Tarik, I know that you're an avid gamer. Does the gaming side of your brain ever leak over into the jiu-jitsu side of your brain? And if so, what kind of crossovers do you think you recognize the most?
Man, like I don't know, like gaming is more just pure entertainment for my part, but obviously there's a lot of skill set there, and there's a lot of strategy and tactics. Depends on what game you're playing, obviously. But I think, for sure the gaming side of me has influenced my view on jiu-jitsu, especially like competition jiu-jitsu, because when there's rules, there's points, and there's all those things, how can you win a fight against a guy who's basically as good as yourself, and the chances of submissions are very low. Then you have to play a very tactical game, right? And that's where I guess maybe the gaming part of it comes a little bit in, where I feel like the strategic and the tactical skills have been more developed, maybe, if I didn't.
That's actually, I really like that a lot. Yeah, the reason I ask, I don't play a lot of games myself. I like video games, but I don't play them as much as I used to. But one game I still will play probably 30 minutes to an hour a night is Call of Duty. And one of the things in Call of Duty that they do is they have these goals that you can reach, where you get these packages, like, where you can customize your soldier and stuff depending on these challenges you complete. And I remember one day, like a couple of years ago, just sitting and be like, man, I should do that with my jiu-jitsu. Like maybe I should make it so that like my goal today in training is to land 2 sweeps of this variation, or to get to this guard and do something with it. And so every training session I have now, I have like a little like goal of some kind of that I'm working on. So I was just curious if you had this as the same kind of crossover from the video game side of your thing.
No, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. Like a lot of the times. There's a guy who teaches Fievel. He's the one teaching here in Bergen. So when he teaches a certain move, I'll try to pull that move off on the sparring, especially on him. I think that's the most fun part. Trying the moves he showed like 3 minutes ago on the guy. That's the most fun. Pulling off the move of the day is one way to go. And I mean, yeah, obviously positional sparring is a great tool there as well. As a teacher, I will, because I don't trust them enough to let them just spar and try to go into positions by themselves. So I'll force them basically into those positions, so they have to learn whether they like it or not. But yeah, there's the individual side of it, and then there's how you can be better as a teacher side of it as well.
Yeah. That's excellent. I really like that. You mentioned earlier that you said that sometimes in competition you'll end up across the mat from someone that's equally skilled as you, and that's very common. And a lot of times the submissions and things like that can become a little less likely when 2 people are really evenly matched. On the topic of strategy and tactics, what are some of the most important strategies you've been able to apply in competition when you find yourself across from someone that's pretty evenly matched with you?
So, I mean, one thing is the beginning of the fight is quite important. So who can start the lead, let's say with an advantage, for example, can be very, very decisive. So typical kind of scenario is double guard pull. So if one sits up, you get an advantage, right? And this sort of sets the pace for the match, because as soon as you have a point, you're in the more defensive role, and if you're losing by 1 point, you're sort of aggressive at that point. And let's say passing a person who is very defensive is going to be super hard, but passing a person who's very aggressive is usually a lot easier, because they're taking risks and they're willing to do anything to actually catch or get something. So that's a very tactical aspect of it. But there's a lot to the rules as well. There's example, if you get to this end of the mat or like out of bounds, how will you deal with will you go for like a cheap little toe hold, let's say, and then roll off the mat and you get 2 points, something like that. You can do a lot of those crazy things once you know the rules in and out, and it's like you could have rolled out of bounds into a scramble and you get nothing, or you can just throw on a cheap toe hold and actually get something from it. So I think if you read the rule book a few times, then you will learn to play the game the way it's meant to play.
Yeah, that was really insightful, man. I like what you said there about the idea of desperation being added to the equation. Like, if you're down on points, you're obviously going to take more risks. You're going to open things up a little bit more. Whereas if you're trying to just hold on till for the last minute of the match, you're going to be real tight and shelled up. And that's a very interesting thing to think about too. Because you're absolutely right. I'm having flashbacks of matches of mine where I can remember being on both sides of that coin. So that's
exactly.
Yeah, so that's really good. Tarik, man, I'll tell you what, man, we've reached about the halfway point of the show here, man. This is where I always play a game with my guests. This is a game called the Pummel. The Pummel's a series of random questions. Some of these are about jiu-jitsu. Some of them have nothing to do with jiu-jitsu. But if you're down to play the Pummel, I'd love to play this game with you.
Yeah, I'm down.
All right, man. Question 1. What's the worst job you ever had in your life?
So I'm not sure what it's called, but it's, like I was basically putting on heat prints on t-shirts.
Okay.
So I was working in a cellar with no windows, and I was just putting on the same logo on 10,000 t-shirts and putting like this heating machine to press on it. I think it's a heat press. That's what you call it.
Heat press, yeah.
Yeah, and so I did that for 8 hours every day for like half a year, and man, like I listened to a lot of podcasts, but it didn't make the time more valuable, to be honest. So a job like that was something I would call a spiritual suicide, and you really like figure out what you really want to be doing if you do one of those jobs.
Yeah, there's no question about it, man. I had one kind of similar. There was a company I worked for where they made artwork, like display artwork for like corporations and offices and stuff. So it's just the same prints of all different, like, ocean scenery or like, a park or something. And it was an assembly line. So I sat there with a pneumatic hose, with just an air hose. And when the frame got to me, it was my job to just blast it with air real quick to get any dust out, pass it to the next guy. The next guy lays down the picture, and then the next guy, and it just goes down an assembly line. But I sat there for 8 hours a day, just pss, pss. If I hear pneumatic hoses, I still get like flashbacks of like, oh god, dude, that's any job where it's just repetitive and it's the same thing. And then you mentioned in a cellar with no air, that's an extra level of torture.
Yeah, because they were refurbishing the offices, so I don't know. Technically, it's not legal to have offices like that, but because they were refurbishing, it was like a temporary thing, and so I guess they could get away with it. But hey,
it builds character, man. It builds character, and who knows, that might have given you the pent up frustration to go out and win championships too. Like you might have left that place that they just ready to kick somebody's ass, take it all out on them. What do you think is a secret talent that you have that people might not know about?
Oof, secret talent. Hard to say, man. Like I feel like I really suck at everything besides jiu-jitsu. If you ever see me like with a football, you realize I was meant for jiu-jitsu. I mean, like other than jiu-jitsu, I love to cook. I love to do like day-to-day things. So yeah, big fan of trying new recipes, and recently I bought like some deer meat from one of my friends who went hunting. And yeah, so now I can cook the deer meat that's in my freezer and like do some different recipes and try some stuff out. So it's really good.
That's awesome. Yeah, dude, venison is a meat that I've only had it a few times, man, but every time I had it, I really liked it. It's very, very good. Well, what are some of your favorite things to make food-wise? What's your favorite recipe that you make?
Oh man, so I love making steaks, like steaks that can be in the oven for a few hours. But I also like, I guess it's called like a stew, or yeah. So when there's meat, and then usually a lot creamy, so I use a lot of like, my food like my words for food in English is very limited,
No,
but
it's okay.
but basically it's creamy and it's thick and nice with meat inside, and you put some potatoes beside it and some greens, and then it's really, really good.
That sounds amazing. That sounds really, you just made me hungry. What do you think is, what's something you wish you were better at?
I mean, I wish I could be better at maybe organizing stuff, maybe get a little bit more control over things in my life to some degree. I try to make lists. I try to put things on schedule. Like if you see my Google Calendar, it's full, but I still feel like I could have somewhat more control over my day-to-day things. But other than that, like everything's a progression, right? I'm way better now than I was 3-4 years ago. So things are getting better.
That's awesome, man. That's a good one. That self-organization is a good one. I think a lot of people struggle with that. What do you think is your favorite bad food to eat? What's your favorite junk food?
Ooh, well, it's not quesadillas. Is not like it's a junk food, but I guess, but it's really
so
good.
They're so good. Yeah, they're so good. Yeah.
I could eat quesadillas.
It almost feels sacrilegious to put the word junk on quesadillas because they're amazing.
Yeah. Well, it depends on how much cheese is inside there.
Yeah, there's levels. You hit a certain point, you're just like, okay, now you're just being over the top. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think was the scariest moment of your life?
Scariest moment of my life, dude. There's a couple of things. But I'm not gonna open up too many doors of my childhood. But
okay.
There was a moment when I was sitting in a car and we were driving maybe 250 kilometers an hour. So it was pretty fast, and basically the driver was saying like, okay, now's we're all gonna die basically.
Oh my God.
But he decided not to, obviously, but yeah. We ended up surviving. I was like 10 years old at the time, or 9 years old. So yeah.
Oh my God.
It was rough.
This is like a taxi or something,
No. This was my dad. This was my dad driving.
Okay, got you. Oh man, that's for a 10-year-old. For any age that would be terrifying. That's crazy. Well, I'm glad everything ended up okay, man. That's good. What do you think,
no worries.
What do you think is your most hated position in jiu-jitsu to get stuck in?
Oh, hated position to get stuck in, man. Well, there's a lot of, like, I guess the newer stuff would be more like fishnet and something called a merman guard, if you've heard of that.
Yeah.
And then if you get stuck in those positions, you feel frustrated. But classically, I would say like bottom mount is a bad position to be in. If the guy knows what he's doing, it's horrible. Like, watch Harder Gracie get mount, and then look at the face of the person on the bottom, and you'll understand what it is to be under a real mount.
Oh, dude, it's terrible. Yeah, especially if they have good control and they start like skydiving with the hips, where they really sink the hips into your gut. It's like, oh man, a good mount is a terrible place to get stuck for sure. And then you watch guys like in MMA who are in that experience getting punched in the face too. That's got to be like just another level of awful, you know. Who do you think's your favorite jiu-jitsu competitor of all time?
Favorite competitor of all time? That's a hard one, because I feel like I have a lot of guys that I like watching. Recently I've gotten I really like watching Fabricio Andre. He's a cool fighter to watch now. But Mikey Musumeci obviously is super cool to watch, very technical. Isaac Dordeline, also one of my favorites to watch. All these guys coming up now are very, very cool to watch. But obviously, like all time, man, Marcelo Garcia, also awesome to watch for sure.
Yeah. Great choices, man. Definitely some good names you listed there for sure. What do you think is your biggest phobia?
Biggest phobia, man. Man, I don't like clowns really, like clown phobia or whatever. But I can tolerate it. Like I watched the It movie, I survived it. It's like it's okay, but it's not my favorite. Definitely not my favorite.
I don't blame you. Yeah, it was a pretty scary movie for sure. What do you think is? We talked earlier about that you're a gamer. What's your favorite video game?
My favorite video game of all time, dude. Let me think, man. Well, I got a couple of favorites anyways. So StarCraft was one of my favorites back in the day. I played a lot of StarCraft, and I played some League of Legends. It's very toxic, so I stopped playing it for a while. So now I'm not playing League of Legends. But yeah, recently I've been just playing some indie games and stuff like that, pretty simple stuff. I finished like Elden Ring, which was pretty cool too as well. But yeah, I don't have a specific favorite at the moment.
That's awesome. Yeah, dude, definitely extra points for mentioning StarCraft, man. That was a game that I was hooked on that when I was younger. I had a neighbor actually who ended up being a part of like a league, like a competition league in StarCraft, and he won a bunch of money. And I remember seeing him win money, and I was telling my dad, I'm like, "Oh, Dad, I think we can play video games and make money." He's like, "No, you're staying in school. You're not gonna be playing." He says you play enough video games as it is, you know. So, man, that's a great addicting but fun game for sure.
Yeah. No, I spent hours in that game for sure.
We talked earlier about your favorite bad food to eat. What's your most hated food? What's something you cannot eat no matter what?
Food I cannot eat no matter what. Well, there's a lot of things I like to eat, but there's actually one thing that I don't like, and that is something called rock fisk here in Norway. Which is sort of like fermented fish.
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
And it's horrible, man. Like, I really tried. I gave it like 3 tries, and I put like all sort of toppings just to like make it taste better. But no, it was not my jam, to be honest. Like, I really struggled.
It's funny.
It was horrible.
It's funny you mentioned that because I was watching a YouTube travel thing about Norway, and I think it was not. I don't think it was just Norway. I think it was just the Scandinavian countries, and they were talking about that. And the host was tried it and couldn't finish it, and so he was saying like,
it smells bad. Yeah. It tastes bad. There's no reason to eat it. I don't see any reason to eat it.
Now, if they put some in a quesadilla, would that help at all or not really? Would it just ruin?
It would ruin everything. It would it's like you don't even want to have it in your house, to be honest, because it's gonna make your house smell horrible.
That's great. All right. Well, I'm probably not gonna try it then. If I ever get the chance, I might try it just to say I did. But yeah, I'll take your advice on that one. Who do you think's your favorite superhero?
Favorite superhero? Well, I was a big fan of Iron Man when that movie came out, like the first movie. But yeah, no, I love Marvel in general, but like one of my recent favorite movies are Guardians of the Galaxy. Obviously, those are awesome. But yeah, I would say Iron Man if I just had to pick one.
That's a good choice, man. If you could have a superpower, what would you choose?
Ooh, superpower. Teleportation. That would be my superpower.
Good one. If you discovered a genie lamp and you could get one wish, normal rules apply for genie rules. You can't wish for more wishes, and you can't wish to kill anybody. What would you choose?
I would wish, man, I don't know. Peace on Earth or something like that, or like everybody has enough food or something like that. That would be awesome. That would be a good wish.
Great wish.
And then hopefully that would like pay itself in the end, and then maybe people would treat each other better. That would be good.
That's awesome. That's a great one, man. If a scientist made a clone of you and you had to roll with your own clone, could you pass your own guard?
Ooh, I actually don't know, to be honest. Like I feel like I would know how to pass myself, but at the same time, I myself would know how I would try to pass. So it would there's a paradox there. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and your guard in particular is one that I don't think would be easy for much of anyone, let alone yourself, to pass. So that's a tough one for sure. Have you ever had a supernatural experience? Have you ever seen a ghost or seen aliens or anything like that?
Oh, I had like so back in the day, we had like this old cabin that we used to live in, and we used to go there every, I would say, weekend when there wasn't any school or anything like that. But yeah, sometimes I would like wake up and feel like somebody was staring at me, and I would have like constant dreams of the cellar in this cabin for some reason, and it was nothing like creepy. It was sort of like comforting for some reason, like someone was watching over me or taking care, you know. But yeah, till this day, I don't know what it was, but it was just a feeling, really.
That's interesting. So some kind of energy in the place coming from the cellar. That's interesting.
For sure.
Interesting. Final question for the Pummel game: if a zombie apocalypse breaks out right now in Norway, what's the first thing you do?
So I would gather all my things, probably go over to my friend's house, which is a little bit more out there, which would be better off to survive the apocalypse, because I'm in the middle of the city, and I think that's a horrible place to be if a zombie apocalypse starts.
Yeah, definitely not. You don't want to be in a populated area. That's for sure. Well, it's good that you have a location to go to. A lot of people don't, so that's good, man. And Tarik, with that was the final question of the Pummel game. Congratulations, you win. You got your double underhooks.
Thank you.
Of course. So Tarik, man, let me ask you this. As I mentioned just a moment ago, you have a very, very effective guard. You're known for having a really dangerous technical guard. What do you think are some of the best tips you can give to attack more effectively from the guard?
So something that we're talking a lot about is going from a defensive cycle into an offensive cycle. So, and this usually starts with, I feel like off balancement is a very, very key thing from playing guard. So, an example would be if you can start to off balance a person so that he has to post on the floor. Usually then you can start looking for underhooks, and underhooks is a big, like, let's say, leap into the offensive cycle. Let's say if you're flat on your back, you're having a horrible time on the bottom, you still have half guard, but if you can make him have to base out and kind of take those posting hands out on the side, that's your big cue to go into an offensive cycle. So if you can start looking for those sort of scenarios, doesn't have to be specifically half guard, but other places as well, this could be a way to change your game from guard for sure.
That's actually, I really like that. Yeah, the idea of kazushi, as they call it, or just off-balancing people, is something that really changed the way I saw my guard once I learned how to properly do that. And it's like, man, I wish that's something I knew from day one, because it wasn't until way later in jiu-jitsu that I really started to pay attention to that aspect of playing guard. So, great answer, man. Let me ask you this: what are your thoughts on the ability of chaining upper body and lower body attacks? Because that's something we see you do a lot. We see you threatening shoulders, we see you threatening chokes, and then threatening leg entries through single leg X and things like that. What are your thoughts on that? How important is that to develop early on?
Well, I think if you have one of each, at least, one upper body attack that you're looking for and one lower body attack you're looking for, what you have is you can threaten no matter how your opponent sort of plays, right? So if they decide to hide their legs very effectively by, let's say, staying on their knees and they're quite heavy there, then having the upper body will be basically the best thing you can do. But once they realize you can threaten their upper body, likely they will start defending by lifting their upper body away and lifting maybe a knee up or giving you the possibility to go into his legs. And so that's when your lower body attacks come into play, right? So it's sort of like when one door closes, the other one opens, and then you just want to be able to finish whether it's the one thing or the other thing. So having both sides covered somehow will be your best bet.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Going back to something you mentioned earlier, we mentioned about the idea of adding desperation within competition, and how it can be, you can experience both sides of that coin depending who scored first and how much time's left in the match. But even just in a training room, sometimes you'll encounter people that are very tight, and they're just not really opening up too much. And when you're the guard player, that can be real tough if someone's staying in a tight combat base. They're not really opening up their elbows. They're not really trying to pass so much as they are just trying to stay in place and kind of stall. What do you like to do against a stalling person when you're playing guard?
So one thing is I like to go with these different people that have this type of style, and it forces me to develop different types of games to do it. One thing that I really like against, let's say if I'm the guard player and the guy on top is on his knees and very tight, is using like a knee lever sort of off balancement. So I'll put my heel on the floor close to his knee, and then I'll try to tip him over. But this is mainly just to get him off balancing, and then I can start picking up my moves from there. But I will occasionally tell my training partners, or like when I'm teaching, I would say, okay, the guy on top has 2 points. He just wants to stall out these 2 minutes. And occasionally I'll flip it over. I'll say the guy on bottom wants to stall out these 2 minutes. So the guy on top has to make something happen. And this is one way to encourage, basically, so that we are prepared whenever this happens actually in competition. Because if you're always training in the sparring room against people who are willing to actually engage, it takes two to tango, then you're always used to that. But then you go to competitions and you meet that guy that really wants to stall. He has the points, and you're not prepared for it. Then obviously it's going to be rough. So I think the best thing you could do is have sparring rounds where you're telling your opponent to stall, basically.
Yeah. That's really valuable advice you just gave, because I think a lot of times when someone has a reputation in a training room as being that way, as not tangoing, as you said, like basically just, kind of slowing up the roll and stalling things out, they tend to get avoided. Like when it comes time to pick a training partner, a lot of people might be like, that guy, I don't want to roll with him. Like he's just going to sit, like, he's going to be a little ball, and it's not going to really be an active progressive role. So, but I think it's important, you said, to grab those people, because you have to learn how to deal with that, especially if you're going to be competing.
Yeah.
So that was great advice for people listening, because I think the natural response would be like, okay, I'm just not going to roll with this guy if I can help it,
Well, there's a time when, like, let's say if you're trying to learn new moves and you're trying to get as much experience from a certain position as possible, then you don't want a stalling opponent, right? Then it's not going to give you what you're looking for. But if you're looking for that competition experience where you're going to have to deal with people who are winning on points and they're basically stalling, or let's say you've been losing a lot of fights where you have the points and you could have kept the points and ride out the time, maybe you have to learn how to stay on top during these scenarios, and that will also make you get better playing the tactical game as well. So I think, you have to kind of decide what kind of training you're going to go for before you go to training.
Yeah, that's very smart, man. From a technical point, I really liked what you mentioned about the importance of causing them to post, and I like how you used the idea of a knee lever against someone that's really stalled out in a combat base, and how ultimately if you can just get them a little off balanced enough to make them post on the ground, you've now created openings, and that you can either chain that with further kazushi, with off balancing in different directions as they recover from the first one, or just entering into different positions. So I think that I appreciate that insight, because I think a lot of people listening might be wondering, okay, well, what specifically am I trying to do? And you answered that very well by encouraging them to, create kazushi and get the guy to make posts. And that's the first step for opening things up. So I definitely appreciate that, man. Tarik, why is the Tarik Plata so effective against all body sizes, in your opinion?
It's quite effective in that sense that most people don't know how to deal with it, so then its effectiveness is quite high because of that. Obviously, with time, when people learn how to defend or prevent it from being set up, then the effectiveness will kind of drop a little bit. But then everything comes with trends, go up and down like everything else. But I would say the effectiveness comes from, shoulder lock using your legs is always going to be very strong, because as you're trying to turn their shoulders, especially like using just your arms, it's a, how should I say, the size plays a big role there. So if it's a bigger guy, I struggle to finish a Kimura on a bigger guy. Like, they can tuck their arm in, they can be really strong. But when I throw the leg over, I can use my whole leg, and I can use my whole body basically to twist that arm, which is basically using bigger muscle groups to win over smaller muscle groups. So that's the mechanical efficiency of it. Besides that, I feel like it's a technique that you can enter from a lot of different positions. I think the most common that people use is top Kimura kind of position, where you throw the leg over. Personal preference, I set it up from guard, double under, or from like sort of different scenarios there. And this allows a very, like, fun thing to play with, where you can enter it from almost like crazy amounts of different positions. Something that I've been meaning to do is actually like creating a new Tarik Hopstock series now, so I have to film in a new instructional 2.0 remastered edition. But when I have time, I'll do that.
That's awesome, man. Well, I look forward to it for sure. Well, let me ask you this: what are some of the best backup options when the Tarik Hopstock fails? Like, if it doesn't work, and you're having some troubleshooting issues, what are some really good systems that you can fall into naturally?
So depends on how it's failing, because if his arm is still stuck inside under your thigh, you can still like step back. You can keep the top position, and you can start looking for like a mount if you sprawl a little bit backwards. Or if his arm pops out, which can also happen, there is an omoplata there you can go for. There is an armbar, sort of like a spinning armbar, where you hook the head, and so you spin back, and you can sit up with an armbar. Other than that, you could salvage it into like a triangle as well once the arm pops out. But the usual is I set it up from bottom. I sweep the guy as I attempt to finish it. If I can't finish it from the top there, then I will salvage some sort of top position from there. So I will usually go to a mount or a side mount. Depends a little bit on what the guy is giving me from there.
That's excellent. I mean, yeah, I really like that. I mean, it really is such an effective position. I think it's a great position too for people, particularly that are smaller, that roll against bigger people often. Because, man, like you said, when you start adding the leverage and strength of your legs against the shoulder, it can be it's really a winning recipe. It's a very effective technique. And then of course, if you like omoplatas anyway, like, man, this will be right up your alley. So that's awesome, man. I appreciate you sharing the insight on that. Tarik, there's something else I wanted to selfishly pick your brain on, because this is very much my personal game, and it's something that you do phenomenally well. You use single leg X really, really well, and you attack legs with it very well. Talk to us about that.
Thank you.
When did the single leg X become like kind of your go-to open guard?
So, like I talked about earlier, when one door closes, another one opens. That's sort of my game. So as I always like to attack their arm on the far side from my half guard, a lot of people would start like stepping up with their near leg, and they would like pull that shoulder away. And so when that started to happen, I started to enter the legs a lot more. And also that's why basically I footlock always with my left arm, because it makes more sense as my game is set up. And so, yeah, I came into single leg X there, and I started developing my belly down footlock after some time. And then eventually I started adding some lapels to that. And that allowed me to kind of explore, knee bars, toe holds, and other positions that I could get from that single leg X guard. So it all started basically with people posturing up and not wanting to give me their upper body. So then I was forced to go into their lower body. That's
awesome. I love it, man. That's great. Yeah, it's such an effective position, man. It's something I've really fallen in love with over the years. And I really like that when you land a single leg X sweep, it puts you right in Ashigarami. I mean, you're right there ready to start attacking on the legs. What do you think are some of the biggest technical errors that you see people make with single leg X in general, to be mindful of if you're developing that position?
Oh man, there's a couple of things, but like Obviously, like the leg positioning is something we all can work on, and it's like, the single leg X is a very good guard because you can control the distance between you and your opponent quite well, and it's very hard to pass on top. You have some counters, you have some stuff you can do, but you're always like sort of over the guy. The guy is underneath you. It's hard to get around it. And as the guy on bottom, you have to be quite active with your hips. So you have to be able to switch your legs a little bit, the configuration, depending on how the guy defends as well. So something that I play a lot with is, let's say, the classical single leg X. You have the heel on their hip, right? And then sometimes they'll take that foot off their hip. And something that you should do then is to throw your foot underneath their thigh and then go for this short leg hook there, or like a butterfly hook. And this is a very good way to switch around your feet and your configuration of your legs. Will also keep them moving on top there. So, and again, like we talked about earlier, off balancement or kazushi is going to be one of those big things from there, because as soon as the guy is sort of standing tall and able to stay there, that's when he sort of has the time to start setting up his defenses or taking away your legs. But if you can keep the guy occupied with just posting or not trying to fall, then you're always on the attack, and so you're setting the tempo of the fight quite well. Other than that, managing to control the distance and see if you can get their heel off the floor on the leg that you're attacking, stuff like this can be very, very valuable.
Yeah. I love what you said there. That's something I think is so important. Is the open guard is such a dynamic position, obviously, and I love how you emphasize the importance of having a good map of transitions of where to go if the position starts changing. Like if the guy starts peeling the heel off the hip, peeling your heel off his hip, you need to know exactly where to go and what the response is for that. And being able to have the next place to be safely going to is really important, so you don't get past and lose the position completely. Now obviously your foot down ankle lock. This is something I really want to talk about because it's such a checkmate kill position, man. I love it. It's one of those things where once you're belly down, you really are kind of a tripod at that point, and escaping seems really hard. So what are some of the most important mechanical aspects of that?
Man, so one thing is the setup has to be on. Like if you don't have a good grip around his foot and it's not right and everything is off, then even if you went belly down, then you're not going to be able to finish it, and then you will eventually have to adjust. But if you adjust, you lose the grip and it just goes to waste. So having a good setup is probably the most important part. And the foot positioning is going to be a very key detail as well. So if you want to see one match where it went horribly, is my match against Ty Rotullo, when he manages to catch my knee there because my leg goes off to the wrong side. So you have to keep your feet together on the same side hip that you're attacking. I mean, like, the biggest difference between, like, I would say lower level, when you start getting footlocks, it's usually because you're in, let's say, a laying position with the other guy sitting, and then you're setting up your footlock. The guy doesn't know how to defend it, so you manage to pull and get your way. But as you get more advanced and the guy gets, your fighting is getting more advanced as well, it's going to be hard to just have that even fight where both are sitting there and you're trying to footlock him. So the best way to actually footlock people is setting it up as you're sweeping them down to the floor. So if you can adjust the control on his foot and everything is tight and everything is ready as you're getting them off balance and as you're getting their hips to the floor, that's when you want to be rolling belly down and going straight in for the kill. So it's the setup is even more important as you get in the higher levels.
That's really excellent, man. I like that a lot. Yeah, well, for anyone out there that wants to learn how to do all this better, Tarik has 2 awesome instructionals with us, and hopefully filming a third very soon here. The Tarik Plata obviously is his primary submission that everyone knows him for. It's something he created, and he really gave an awesome instructional with us at BJJ Fanatics, detailing how to set it up, how to use it, what it is. I would have liked to go more in depth on that today, but it's kind of hard to verbally explain some of those things. It's something that's very visual. So for anyone that's interested in seeing what it is, if you don't know what it is and you haven't used it before, definitely check out his instructional with us. The other one is single leg X to belly down ankle locks. He has an instructional exclusively on that, something that I've gotten tons of benefit from watching. So head over to bjjfanatics.com, guys, and check out these 2 great instructionals. Tarik, in closing, man, what are some of your major goals for 2024? What are some things you hope to accomplish by the end of the year?
2024. Okay. Europeans in January is going to be one of my goals. So that's going to be gi competition. And then there's, I have some competitions inside there, like AGP, London Grand Slam. And obviously I'm going to be doing gi worlds, in May, June. But yeah, there will pop up some other things as well. There's of course ADCC trials in February that I want to be doing too. So the start of the year is going to be a little bit mixed, no gi and gi. But hey, I got to go to the trials and give it another try. So it is what it is. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the next season as well.
Well, folks, unfortunately, we're fresh out of time. Tarik, man, I've really enjoyed this conversation a lot, man. Like I said in the intro, you're someone I always really enjoy watching compete. There's several aspects of your game that really resonate with me personally, so you're someone I'm always following. And it was great hearing your story, and I appreciate you lending all the technical insight you gave today, man. You're welcome back on the show anytime you'd like to come back.
Thank you.
Awesome, man. For anyone out there that wants to keep up with Tarik, it's real easy to do so. His Instagram is Tarik_BJJ. His YouTube channel is Tarik BJJ, so make sure you guys subscribe there. Hit the little bell icon to get notified when he adds new videos as well. His website is tarikbjj.com. That's a great place to keep up with seminars and all information regarding him. He is available for seminars, guys, so message him and try to get him out to where you are. He does these long tours that I've seen him do, hopping from country to country and going across different places. If you guys are ever in Norway, check out Frontline Academy. That's where he's teaching on a regular basis. It's a great facility, really nice people. If you're not able to make it to Norway, thankfully you can learn from Tarik anywhere in the world here at bjjfanatics.com. Today we discussed in depth 2 of his instructionals, the Tarik Plata and the single leg X to belly down ankle locks, both available right now. And he's got more coming in the future soon, so make sure you guys are staying tuned. And that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. I really appreciate you tuning in. Please stay tuned for the next episode of the BJJ Fanatics podcast.